So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start out and we're going to talk about building in Blackboard and creating discussions. Now, one of the things that, uh, actually, I'm going to stop the recording for 1 second because what I want to do is I want to make sure I know exactly why. Okay. So the discussion tool in Blackboard is used for a variety of reasons. Some people use the discussion tool to probably the majority of people use it to actually have conversation with students about readings or content within the class. The discussion tool also affords you the opportunity to be able to have just public conversations with the entire course. So the discussion boards also end up being Q&A boards for topics or units. It's a general class Q&A board. Also, you'll see there'll be theme or topic ones. So some people break out discussions not only into course content, but some people who want to build community or have a social space will have one singular board for like a community like lounge area where people can share information and stuff that's going on in their life. So it separates out the classroom and it kind of gives them that 5 minutes before class where they kind of lean over and they talk to each other and they check in. So the discussion board, the biggest thing about the discussion board is that it's a public venue for the entirety of your class to be able to work with one another. Now, Pat was asking earlier about groups. You are able to create groups in Blackboard, which allow you to kind of break off your discussions into specific individuals or into specific groups. And that gets a little bit more complicated, but the first thing you do need to know is how to actually build a discussion in Blackboard. Now, a couple examples that I normally do is I just want to show you what a discussion looks like. So in this case, you'll see here that this workshop class that I have, I always start off all my classes with some type of public forum or some type of question thing. So this one says, this is a public forum for general questions about the course materials, and syllabus. If you read the post and know the answer, please feel free to respond. If you wish to inquire on a more specific issue, please contact me directly. So I have a public forum that kind of covers things of someone has a question about the syllabus. People can kind of go in there and answer it. It's intended to be a community board so that anyone can answer it. It's not solely the faculty member to kind of come in and answer. However, if no one answers, then I usually say that I will go in and answer that question myself. So that's usually very common in online classes to be able to have kind of a public board just to get questions out of the way. Now, why you break up and have like thematic discussions is so that you can try to direct and steer the conversations. You don't want students in the week 1 discussion about the article that they had to read to start asking questions about the syllabus. So if you can break it up and have one long-running discussion forum that is created, you're going to be able to kind of try to separate out these are weekly course conversations and then these are conversations about other topics. Additionally, for many of you, one of the most common things that we really encourage people to do in the first unit of the class or the first couple days is to do an introduction to themselves. They don't have an opportunity to meet each other otherwise, and so we usually encourage people to kind of have some type of activity or team builder. In this case, mine is, and this is, I put mine up and this is an example, is in this discussion, you'll introduce yourself into the class. And when you meet people, what are 5 of the most important things you want people to notice or know or notice about you, and what are 5 things, list them and then tell them a little bit about why each is important. And then I give them instructions to say, come back at least once a day to see what others are posting, and if someone says something interests you or you have something in common, write and reply a post. I'm trying to start out with not saying you have to automatically write 2 responses. I want to see if I can generate people to kind of come back in and get to know each other. But you can also have on that caveat, please make sure to respond to everyone in the welcome. Please respond to at least 2 of your classmates, whatever you want to do. Also, some faculty choose to do a graded welcome and some people choose to do an ungraded welcome. And I generally don't grade welcome forums, but I keep track of them, and that's what I use to do my little emails that say, I haven't seen you in the class, I haven't seen you post a welcome. Kind of get students going on there. Additionally, there are a variety of other things that I just want to go over really quickly, and I'm just going to put this in the student preview so you don't have to see all the weirdo buttons. I have my introduction. I also have the ability to post media in my discussions. So sometimes what I will have in a discussion forum is going to be, I have an article that matches a video and I want people to read the article and watch the video. I will put it in my course content, but say I want to make sure that everybody watches it, I also embed it here in this area. Or I can just have this video embedded in there. So my example here is that I can use media to start a discussion. What I have is I have a video that I found that is related to all of the articles that I have in the class. And this particular one is going to be on Facebook. And so I've had a bunch of articles that students have to read. And then what I want to do is I have a series of, and this kind of culminates that I want people to do this. This is my also way of saying I understand that sometimes we don't always get students that read everything, that they even just respond on this particular video. I feel like this gives a good round, an overarching ability for a student to be able to communicate and follow through. You can also put up your own lecture video or your own commentary up there to say, I want to kind of lead the conversation and this is how it's going to go. So how you normally might start a conversation in an online, a face-to-face class where you kind of approach and give the prompt, but you give it in the class, you could also do that as well with your own media too. And so I have a couple examples here of this is from one place, and I actually have given the article on the history of Facebook, what concerns come up for you and how does it relate to the previous article. Beyond, take a moment to watch the short video with Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Then I also have here where I can have a prompt where I have the discussion prompt below and I have the media that somebody's watching. So it may not be in the class, but it's also, in conjunction with the readings and watch this video. And then I'm kind of giving students that. You can insert images and all sorts of things into a discussion post as well. Students also have the ability to do these things additionally, and that there are instructions for students as well as you. And this particular class is a little older, so I don't have the links. But under student resources, we have the links to the digital and online resources at STICK, which is a website dedicated for students. And there are instructions for students on how to insert a web link into a discussion, how to put a video into discussions, that kind of thing as well. So I just like to cover that the discussion tool is incredibly popular. It's probably 99% of all faculty use it in conjunction with other topics and other ways, but it's an incredibly important tool. And it's also the only way you really get to publicly converse with your students, especially in an online class. So I do like to just kind of give that preface out there so that people have kind of an understanding of it. The first thing that I do want to also go over is just some language for you. When you're in Blackboard, you see here that you see the phrase discussion board. And you'll see it also on the course menu where it says, I'm trying to highlight this, it's not working, where it'll say discussion board there as well. The discussion board, and here's my analogy. Imagine you have a cork board or just a board in your classroom, and that board or cork board is just sitting there. And the discussion board and this cork board are basically the place where conversation happens in your class, the public front-facing kind of conversation. So you have the board. So this is just the place where students go to access what we call forums. And so say you take a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, I just need a piece of paper. So on that piece of paper, I go ahead and I write out a prompt, or what we call a prompt, or instructions, or my questions for my discussion. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a piece of paper, and I'm gonna write my question on here, and then I'm gonna tack it on the board. So in an online class, what you do is you go to the discussion and you create a forum. The forum is going to be where you place your question. Then what happens is that if you have your imaginary corkboard and you have your question posted on a piece of paper, students come by and they will write on it as they're participating in the class. As they go, they're going to go ahead and respond to your question and write answers. But as it fills up, other students might comment on it. People can come back in and forth and they can add to that. That discussion is what we call threads or posts. So a discussion board is the board that all of your forums are on. Your forums are all your questions or the prompt that you're going to ask students to respond to. And then the students respond by creating threads or posts. So those are kind of the common language that you're going to hear when you're talking about responding to this. So in this circumstance, this is the discussion board. This title here is going to be a forum. So this area right here that's highlighted in yellow is your forum. And then students will click on the title to go in there, and then they're going to respond to discussions. Now, the very first time anyone, you or students, go into a non-responded forum, you will see nothing, and you'll see no items found. That just means no one has put up a post yet. What'll happen is they come, just like I said, coming up to the piece of paper and writing on it, they're going to come to their discussion forum, they're going to click on create thread, and they're going to get your prompt that you provided, or your forum description, as it says. And then what they do is they provide a subject, and then they're going to put their message in here. When they're done with their message, and if you're asking them to attach a file, so Pat, in this case, if you're asking students to post up a draft for other students to read, they can go ahead and click on browse my computer, and they can go ahead and link that to the discussion forum as well, so students could see that. Then what they can do is go ahead and click on submit, and then the post will be there. So just for a really quick example, I'm going to just put in here title, and then I'm going to put in response to forum prompt. When I'm all set, I can save it as a draft, but no one will be able to see that. A save draft button means that it is hidden from everyone, including instructors. So if a student doesn't hit save draft, they have to come back and resubmit it. Otherwise, I can go ahead and click on submit. And now you'll see that that empty area now fills up with the date and time that I submitted, the title of the thread, who the author is, if it's published, so that's letting me know, me as the writer, that I didn't have it held. If it said draft, it would say that there. And then it also tells me how many, for me, if I've read this as a user, but it tells me who I haven't replied to someone or read someone's post, and how many people have replied to me. So that's kind of the interaction that students have. This is what you would have. So every time you want to respond to your prompt or question, you hit create thread. Students can then come in and read the title. So they click on title, they're going to be able to see the prompt, and they can reply at any point. Then lastly, to return, you get okay. You also have this thing called subscription. In every forum, if you've turned this feature on, and I'll show this to you in a little bit, if you do subscribe to the forum, what this will do is send an email out to you every single time someone responds to the forum. Now, I do this on a weekly basis in my class, so I know who's responding to that week. And then so I can click on subscribe, and then at the end of the week, I click on unsubscribed, and I no longer get notifications about people participating in this. It can be really weighty if you get a lot of conversations going, but I find it to be incredibly helpful. It does two things for me. It tells me when people are participating, and then it tells me when people are participating. So I can now start to figure out when my students come to class. If students are waiting till the last minute, I can have a conversation about that. If I find that everybody responds on Thursday night right before Friday, at least I also know that I need to go into the class. I have to make time to maybe go in and really investigate those discussions Thursday night or Friday morning. So that's kind of also, so it tells me when they are doing it and what they're, and it just gives me a notification, and then I can come into Blackboard and read it. And then it also gives me more kind of data related information as well. Okay, so that's just the overview of discussions. I do like to cover that language just so we're kind of all on the same page. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the preview, and now we're going to talk about actually building a discussion. When you're in Blackboard, I advise people to do a couple things. Make sure that when you start out, on the upper right-hand side of the screen, which would be probably about 1 o'clock on a clock. So I usually tell people I divide the screen into quadrants. And so you're going to have upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. And then you're going to go ahead and have a clock. And so this would be midnight. This would be 9 and 3 and 6 for you. So occasionally I will do that just to give you some orientation if you can't see my mouse. So approximately about 1 o'clock on the clock, you're going to see that the edit button is on. You cannot create a discussion if your edit button is off. Edit mode on is going to be when you can edit and create things in Blackboard. Your edit mode off is kind of what we call facilitation or teaching mode. And that's if you want to get rid of all of the buttons and all of that as well. But you can teach it in both modes. So you don't have to worry about ever shutting that off, but you need to make sure it's on when you want to create a discussion. When you're ready to create a discussion, what you want to do is come over to the discussion board, and I create mine under the quick links. I go ahead and click on my discussion board, and I have a button in the upper left quadrant under where it says discussion board, and it says create forum. I'm going to go ahead and click on create forum, and this is where when your course map is available, it's really, really helpful. Now I'm going to, for 1 second, just see if I can find a course map of mine. Or one of ours, so I can just kind of show that to you all. So what would happen is if I have my course map, I'm going to start out. Now, anytime you're in Blackboard, you kind of already know this, is that you're going to, as the instructor, you're going to get a window. The window I call is the settings window. The settings window lets you create the forum by putting your language, or create the assignment by putting your language in there, and then you have to determine the settings that you want for this particular forum. So what I usually do is tell people that this is kind of the longest you're ever going to spend in a discussion, mostly because I'm going to go over the settings a little bit more. But what you're normally going to do is I know what I want my settings to be. You're going to click your buttons and submit after you've entered your prompt. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and find something from Mary's and my ODP prompt. And so this should be familiar for you all being in the class. So what I would normally do is here, I have a name here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my course map, and I'm going to copy the title that I provided on my course map for my particular unit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of the question or prompt that I have created for that discussion, and I'm just going to go ahead and in the box I'm going to hit paste. And so you'll see now that I can go ahead and I have the prompt that I have in my course map. I just cut and pasted it right into Blackboard. Now, if you don't have a prompt, or you're doing something on the fly, making an adjustment kind of thing, you have the ability to edit all of this stuff as well. And so, let me just do this. I have my prompt here, but say I want to highlight something, I do have the ability, and all of these buttons on your text editor or content editor, depending on what you call it, it's going to let you change the font. It's going to be just like Microsoft Word. If you scroll over it, it will tell you what each button does, so you'll be able to make adjustments. So if you do need to make some formatting adjustments, you can do that as well. Additionally, if your prompt comes in kind of funky, and I usually tell people, like, say it comes in like this and you need to rework it, you're able to just go ahead and play with this. And that has to do sometimes with how you cut and paste things over. And so you're able to you know, sit here and play with the formatting however you want. I'm going to go ahead and just clear all this and put my prompt in as I had it. Oh, there we go. So I've cut and pasted my prompt into here. I have my title, and now I'm going to come down to some setting kind of things. Form availability, for many of you, this might be familiar. This is going to allow you to put what I call timers. You can put a timer on a forum that allows it to not be shown up until the week or time that you want it to be. Now, in order for you to put the timers on, you have to make the discussion available. So everywhere in Blackboard, you'll see the word form availability, availability options. I think it just says options someplace. Available and enter date and time restrictions, which I call the timers. Those two things work in conjunction with each other. Available trumps all things that have to do with timers. So is it available or not? If I'm never going to want this discussion to be seen, I want to hit no. Then that means that anything I put under the date and time restriction will not kick in. So I can't accidentally show something I am definitely sure I don't want to be seen. Then all I have to do is, if I do want it to be, I can hit yes. If I hit yes now and hit submit, it will automatically make it available. But if I want it to be yes, but I want it to be shown at a particular time, I can go ahead and click on 9:24, and I'm going to say I want this to be at 9:40 a.m. When I go ahead and do that, I can hit submit now if I wanted to, and this would now be hidden from my students, and it would not become available until 9:40. Besides entering the dates in, you have buttons that allow you to choose from a calendar, or this button here allows you to choose from anywhere in half-hour increments from midnight all the way to the end of the day. And when you select end of the day, it's going to put in here 11:59. I'm going to go ahead and put in, hopefully, let's just do 9:45 a.m. There we go. And I'm going to put a space there. Okay. I can choose to when it gets shown, and I can choose to when it gets pulled back. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I rarely ever do this display until for most content in Blackboard. The reason why is once it becomes available, I want my students to be able to refer to it at any time, whether it's discussion, as an assignment, an article, whatever. What I normally would use display until, or what most people I understand to do, is when you want to pull back something. You want to give them a preview article or a cheat sheet or some type of format, and you tell the students if you don't come in by a certain time, you can pull that back. That's usually the only time I ever see someone pulling back content and hiding things, because most of the time you're building on stuff, so you want students to be able to come back and reference things throughout the course. So, but it does let you not only allow the students to see something, but it also pulls it back at a certain date and time as well. Now, now we're going to get into forum settings, and there's a couple options here, and I just like to make sure people know what these options are. The very first section is going to be what we call viewing threads or replies. Now, when you go into a standard discussion, which I showed you, is the students will see a forum, they click on the title, and they come to the forum with all of the people who have participated ahead of them. We call that standard view. That's just the regular view that you kind of just walk into the classroom and you sit down. You listen, you know, hear other people, somebody might already be talking, and you kind of start participating in the discussion. The next button that you have option under view threads or replies is what we call, now I'm going to just say, this is what I call it, post first. And the language here says that participants must create a thread in order to view other threads in this forum. We call it post first because what it does is it actually puts a door that has a lock to it. And the lock is only going to become the lock door is only available once a student has posted their own discussion first prompt. So what that means is that you create your question, the discussion post stands there, and then the students have to actually respond to your prompt and question before they get to see the rest of the class. So where in my first example for standard view, usually students will come in, they will see the question, they'll look through everyone else's question, and then they'll go ahead and start writing their own. In this case, they walk right through the door. The post first option says, nope, door is locked. What I need you to do is I need you to actually read my prompt. I need you to respond to it. And the minute that they hit submit, the door unlocks and they can walk in. And now they see everyone's posts. I have a language that I usually say, what people choose post first for is going to be what I call how not to affect and infect. So in online discussions and in class discussions, people are often affected by what other people say, and then that infects their response potentially. If you have prompts or discussions where you feel students would be affected by others, that's why you usually would select post first. People have other rationale for it, but that's kind of my language. It is to prevent people from being affected and infected, especially if you're asking people to put up their perspective or point of view or justify a reading with some facts and statistics. They don't want you to have to just do the whole ditto thing or join into them. So I'm going to actually, just for the point of this so you all see it, I already showed you the standard view. I'm going to go ahead and just put the post first so you can see what that looks like when we come back into this discussion. Now, when we get into grading, the one thing about Blackboard is that whenever you start to select different buttons, more stuff appears. So the default for grading is that there is no grading, but then you have the button that says grade the discussion forum. The moment that you click on that, more functionality shows up for you because you might want to have a more layered set of features for when you grade. Now, if you just want to grade and you say that my points possible is going to be on a 2-point scale. Now, I always tell people if you're not going to use a rubric or you're not going to explain to students what your kind of scale is, a very simple scale is 0, 1, 2. Didn't do it, did do it, and then exceptional. And so that's a really simple kind of rubric to explain to students how that works. So I'm just going to use this example that I have. It's very low level, not very complicated, but it also doesn't provide that much feedback to students in terms of their response. Now, if I go ahead, now one thing to let you know is that when I start making choices, some things will be X'd out. So by choosing post first, I'm also not allowed to grade threads. you're able to grade the whole form, which means that if a student replies 5 times, you're going to give the student 1 grade for all 5 responses. But you have to choose standard view to do what's called grading threads, which means that what will happen is that the students are literally you're going to enter a grade for every single thread that a student gives. So it's going to be an accumulation of grades that go across a series of them. So regular grading in a form doesn't matter how many times they respond, they're going to get a grade. And then grading threads means you're going to actually give them a grade for every thread that they submit. Now, because I want to demonstrate to you post first, I'm going to go ahead and take off. I'm going to take off the grading thread and not worry about that at the moment. But if you have questions about it, you can always ask me towards the end. Now, here I have where it says this type of form requires a specific set of options. You're going to get notifications that are going to tell you if you select this, you lose this. So just to give you that heads up, this is why I always tell people it takes me, like in a workshop, why it takes me a little while to explain it to people is when you make choices, choices come with changes. And so in this response is to have a post first, I can't have students edit my discussions and I can't grade threads. And the system's just going to start to cross those things out or gray those things out for me. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window. I'm doing post first. I want my discussion to be graded on 2 points. Now, there's a feature in Blackboard that keeps track of everyone's submission. So if I want to, what I call grade on the fly or needs grading, means that the system is going to just say, hey, these are all the things turned in. Do you want to grade them now? But if you have a process that says, I want you to post first and reply twice, you can set this up not to get notified until you get a certain amount of posts. Now, what I think is funny is that I can put in 3 posts here. It won't tell me which one are replies and which ones, but usually if someone replies 3 times, they've met their kind of requirement for their 1 post and their 2 replies. You have the option to have as many as possible. And I think it's funny because you can have this set so that students have to make 50 responses before you get a notification they have to be graded. This is just a notification. You can grade them at any time, whatever you want. But it's just funny that that notification that you might want, it doesn't happen until up to 50. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set that to 3 for myself. So this is saying that I don't want to get an indicator to tell me that my student has posted until I have 3 posts from that person. It's just for your benefit when you go to facilitate. Right now, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect your grading choices. You do have the ability to assign a due date on here. And if you notice here, you're going to see that it says 7/24. And I want to make my due date say 5 o'clock this afternoon. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. And that's just a due date. The due date does not prevent someone from going in. But what the due date does do is in the grade center, it is going to put a flag or a little notation that tells you that that assignment is late. So that when you go in there and say, oh, this person submitted late, I'm going to deduct points. That's what the benefit of putting the due date on it is. It also tells the students that it's due. Now, if you're using rubrics, you have the ability to select a rubric, create a rubric, or create from existing. I do a whole rubrics workshop, which we'll be offering as well. And we can go ahead and click on select rubric, and I can search for any rubrics that I currently have in my class. And so that's a feature as well. But this is where you would go ahead and attach your rubric. Now, this is for the rubric tool in Blackboard. If you are using a rubric that is on paper and you're not using the Blackboard tool, that is where you would probably want to either link it in your discussion form up here, or make sure that the students are aware that you've put that form or document someplace in the class and they have to refer to it. But this is actually talking about the rubric in Blackboard, the rubric tool, and that you can associate it with it. And that gives you an interactive rubric to grade with. So you have your options for grading: no grading, grading threads. I'm going to grade on 2 points. I'm going to ask that after 3, each student participates 3 times. I'm going to get a notification to tell me that they've met that requirement. I'm going to have a due date to let me know that I need to maybe potentially penalize somebody for being late. And then I have chosen to add a rubric or not add a rubric. In this case, let me see if I have one available. I do have a rubric at one of my examples. I get a window that pops up. It may not be popping up on the screen for you. And what's going to happen here is it's actually going to change my point value because I chose to have a rubric. And I'm going to say show the rubric with scores. And the reason I'm going to show this to you is I want you to see what the students see when you post up a rubric in a discussion. Okay. Like I said, this is the longest you will ever spend in a discussion forum in setting it up. The next section you have is subscription. This is that button that I said that you could do. And this is simply the default is to allow people to subscribe, and that they're going to get a link to the post that someone has replied to. Now, you can choose to not have subscriptions if you want to. That's up to you. That means you also can't subscribe. This cancels out subscription to everybody. You can also select that only allow members to subscribe to threads. And so this one is going to bifurcate out and let people only subscribe to particular threads that they want to follow, or allow members to subscribe to the whole entire forum. Now, depending on what your settings are, you get kind of an option here. If I chose only threads, they'd have to select a button that would then let them choose the thread, and then how they're going to get that response. Now, it currently comes as an email, and you can get the entire response that someone gets emailed to them to their email, or you can just get a link. Now, let me tell you what the rationale is why the default is include the link. If you include the body of the post, that means the student never has to come back into Blackboard to read responses. It also puts a kind of a wall between them to automatically go in. If I click on here and I include just the link, it will let me click on it, and then I can sign into Blackboard and see that link and then automatically be in the window to hit the reply button. I'm going to be honest with you, that's why I choose that option. So I allow everyone to subscribe to the entire forum so that they can go ahead and respond, and then I can click on here and let them just get a link in their email that tells them that someone has responded in their class. This just lets people be able to know, on time, immediacy wise of being able to respond and come back in. Also, again, it's for your benefit for facilitation. So that's going to be the subscription area, and these are the defaults. Allow them to and include post. It's up to you to make adjustments or changes. The next option that you have is create and edit. Now, because I chose to do post first, what will happen here is that some things get crossed out, and then some things I will not be able to choose. The reason why is that I'm not allowed to have anonymous or allow my users to delete or edit their posts. And the reason why is that in order to track post first, the system has to say that a student can't delete their post. How does the system know that they've responded to be able to see everyone if the student has deleted their post? So what it does is it automatically says, nope, some of these features, in order for you to be able to have that door that unlocks once they post, you can't have students delete it. Otherwise, it would reset the whole form every time. So that's why some of these things get grayed out. If I come up here and change my mind to standard view, you'll see that these become available, and it says allow for anonymous posts as a way, and that's because I chose for it to be graded. Can't have it be anonymous and then also grade that. I'm going to come back in here, and again, it will gray out or cross out anything that you're not having. Then you have the option here to go ahead and you have to with this feature with creating new posts. Sorry, with post first. You have to have the students be able to create their own threads to be able to do their first post. And then here it says, do you want to allow for file attachments? If you're doing a straight discussion where you don't want, there's two reasons why. If you want students to post up a paper, you want to have attachments. If you want to discourage students from posting up their discussion prompt as a Word document, you would uncheck that and then say you have to use the actual text box window to do your response, or you have to cut and paste into that box. And that way students aren't just posting up a Word document. So that's kind of just to let you know that's why file attachments are. Either you're using it because you want students to do attachments, or you're unchecking it because you don't. And that's usually the two reasons why. Allow students to reply with a quote. There's a button that says quote, and what students can do is from another user, they can click on the quote button and it will put their prompt in there and they can respond and then kind of type inside they can make responses to it. That's really up to you if that's what you want. I don't see a lot of students doing that feature, but it depends on what you're asking the students to do in the discussion. If you're asking students to, analyze or take someone's initial like opening paragraph to a paper, they might have to use the quote button in order to then respond. So that's an option for you as well. Force moderations of posts. What this means is that you can have, you click on this, this actually, you can assign an individual student to moderate your discussion. So you can have a discussion, you lead the discussion, but you have two moderators who will be in the class, and you can assign that moderator to approve all posts. So it does put a weight on the student to be able to come into that discussion at that moment for that week. But you can have a moderator also in the class that is moderating posts and approving them to go forward. The last option, and I will be honest with you, there aren't a lot of, I've actually never seen in all my years of using Blackboard anyone use these features. Feel free to use them though. Allow post tagging. This allows people to basically put up little phrases for themselves to identify particular posts. Say it's on, critical thinking, chapter 1. They're talking about a particular like peptides, whatever the case, they can make a little tag for themselves. The other thing is to allow members to rate posts, which gives them a little star system, but no indicator of what the stars mean. So it's just like 5 little stars, and students say this is a good post by assuming 5 is great and 1 is 0 is not. The only thing I could think of is if you're doing posts, is if you were doing some type of creative post where you're asking students to post up instructions on how to do something, and the students had to rate who had the best instructions. That would be when you would go ahead and check that and allow that to happen. So I've spent, a good amount of time here in my forum, and I'm actually going to change this really quickly here so you see this. What's going to happen, or actually I'm going to go to 52 because it's going to change already. I've made my prompt, I've cut and pasted it, I've made my settings, I know what it wants to be, I've attached my rubric. I am all good for this particular discussion, and I'm going to go ahead and hit on submit. When I do submit all discussions, as you create anything in Blackboard, go to the bottom of the page. Going to the bottom of the page, if I show this to you here, now I have my rubric discussion. Now it'll tell me here that the form is not available, but it will be available today after 9:52. If I am a student in this class and I click on the discussion board, I will not see that discussion. And I have to wait another 18 seconds to be able to see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hang out and say, so you know that, like I said, the one thing I know about Blackboard, I can guarantee you occasionally there are bugs here and there, but the timers don't fail. So in general, you'll see that the discussion form is not there, but then when it actually becomes 9:52 and I come and I refresh my page, you will see now that that rubric discussion is now available for the students to participate in, and the students can come into it. I click on that as a student, and here this says this is a post first discussion forum, and there are currently no threads in this discussion. It will give me my forum description, and it will give me my grading information at the bottom. This will tell me here over on the side, it will tell me, it actually provided me a picture of my rubric, which for some reason I'm not able to share at this second. One second. It's going to share my rubric with my students so my students can see how I'm choosing to grade them. And then I can always just return back to my, my discussion in Blackboard. So that's how post first works. And the students will keep seeing that window until they click on a thread, and then they post first. And then they respond to my rubric question. I can go ahead here and hit submit, and now that post is there, and as a student I can now see the discussion as I will see the discussion for the rest of time. From a faculty standpoint, what will happen is you will come to the discussion board. I'm going to exit out of the student preview, and I'm going to go ahead and click on my discussion board again. I'm going to come to my discussion, and I see now here that I have a I can see here that from total posts, unread posts, and unread replies, I can see that I have a post that's available. I can always click the number to be taken to those particular ones, or I can just go ahead and click on the title and I can enter my discussion. You can see here that the create thread button is available to me. I can see I have a button that says grade discussion forum, and I can also subscribe. So I usually tell people when you're getting into a discussion, I usually have two hats on. At the beginning of the week, I am just facilitating. I don't think about grading. I just go in and I'm going to click on Kyle's post and I'm going to read it and I might reply. I might quote it. If I have concerns, I, as the faculty member, have an email button that will let me just automatically email my students so that I can say, hey, kind of off track, but I'm not going to post this in a public forum. If someone writes something inappropriate, I will go ahead. I do not delete posts. I will put them up and email the user first and say that, and then I usually will end up having a conversation if it's, I encourage you to, fix your post or make some adjustments or whatever the case might be, or I can email them and say it's inappropriate then and address that post in the discussion forum to the rest of the class as well. So what I normally say to people is there's an instinct for faculty when someone posts up something that may be inappropriate or is off track. Instead of actually just deleting it and dealing it with the student, I also say I want to remind students about posting, and I give them the rules or the etiquette or the expectations that I have. And then I can determine what I want to do next. I also generally don't delete anything that is of student work so that I don't have students coming back saying I delete things, but that I also just address that issue in the environment. And if it is something completely inappropriate, I usually will bring some part of the administration or my chair or something into that to figure out how to handle that. I'm going to be honest with you, as a person who's taught myself, I have never had something so inappropriate that I had to go that far, but I do know that every once in a while, just like in the regular classroom, we have one or two of those situations. Most of the time, I actually have students who will do two things. They will try to overtake a discussion by posting so much, or someone who writes the next version of Moby Dick. And so it's the longest post ever, and I'm saying here, nobody's reading your posts, and I need you to cut it out and write more succinctly. That's usually what I get in terms of inappropriateness, but I want to let you know that you kind of can handle that yourself in terms of discussions. If I want to go ahead and grade this post, I can click on grade form and I get a window of all of my participants, and then it tells me that I can grade them. When I go ahead, and I'm going to be more in depth in the grading workshop when we get into this, but I just want to let you know, you click into this and you have a grading interface, and the grading interface will let me read all of the students' posts for that week. That's also why I tell people I have a facilitation hat and a grading hat, because at the end of the week, I'm going to get all of the posts from that student at once, and I need to understand the context of the responses. It's not going to let me grade all of my students in one giant window. It grades by student and individual. This is where I can go ahead and respond to them if I want to. I can go ahead and put a grade in here, or I could go ahead and use my rubric and grade using my rubric as well. And then when I'm ready to submit the grade, I can do that. Last thing just to point out to you is when you're in the grade center as a faculty member. So we're going to go bottom left-hand side of the screen, course management. I'm going to come to my grade center. I'm going to come to my full grade center for me. Well, actually, if I come to needs grading, you'll see here that I have an item to be graded, and I think that might be because I already hit the button to grade. It automatically thought that I graded this discussion, but it would be here if I hadn't hit the grade button. Or I can go to the full grade center and I can click on here, and if I go to find my discussion, you'll see here that I have this, and it's currently, the discussion is currently happening. And so I can go ahead and grade user activity. I do have a due date on here, so that will also let me know that, that I'm able to grade at any point. So that's going to be the discussion tool, kind of in a very broad, very big nutshell, and just kind of letting you know. So I'm going to return us back to the discussion forum. Want to pause the recording and ask people if they have questions.